Welcome to TaleLearCode. Here there will be tales about software development, learning from each other, code to build solutions. And now your host, Chad Green.
Welcome everyone to the first of what I hope is many instructional software development videos. In this video, I'll be talking about C# programming. I hope to do many others, not only just C#, but also Azure, serverless computing, graph databases, software craftsmanship, and so on. Before I get too far and forget, if you like this video, please click the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. That will help me know what you like so I can produce more videos like those. Plus, subscribing will help you know when I publish new videos, especially if you hit that notification bell. This video was taken from a TaleLearCode Twitch stream where I had answered a previous question about how you could retrieve the values of a class even if you did not know the names of the properties in that class. Now I've gone through and edited the video to take out the distractions like side discussions about cars, Lego, and other things people were into during the stream to make this video more succinct to the topic of C# reflection. But sure enough, those side discussions are not only lots of fun for me, they're also lots of fun for those in the chat during the streams. Watching the live Twitch streams, you will get to be a part of the discussion and potentially help determine the topics of future videos like this. So be sure to check out and follow my live Twitch streams. I stream Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern. And now, without further ado, let's learn about C# reflection. Let's talk a little bit about reflection. And sure enough, I hope Rustic's back from picking up his food. But I felt pretty bad Wednesday night. Rustic asked a question, and I think I just crossed over hour 3. It was a really long day. I was pretty worn out, but he asked a question and he didn't even know how to ask it, that's fine. He was like, hey, how could I don't remember exact text of the question, but basically said, hey, how could I get the values of something, but not necessarily get the values within a class, but not necessarily know what the property values are, the names of the property values. And I was like, oh, that would be reflection, right? That's how you do it. And I gave a really, really quick demonstration. But I really felt like that was kind of a crappy demonstration. Now, with that being said, I didn't actually prepare anything. So this is still going to be pretty ad hoc, but let's do something, right? Let's see what we can come up with real quick. And admittedly, especially because I didn't look this up beforehand, I'm going to probably have to look something up because I'm probably not going to remember everything. But I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to create a console app. And I don't care what I call it because I'm just going to throw it away. Come on. All right. So we've just got a standard console app. And let's just say let's add a class. And I'm gonna try to make something probably similar to what I bet Rustic was dealing with, because this is kind of similar to what I've been seeing with my co-level cohorts recently, right? So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna create let's create an animal class. I'm gonna create an animal. Let me create an automobile class. Or something at least animals I only know so much about. All right. So we're gonna create this public class automobile. I apologize for the dog in the background. And let's just say we have some methods, right? So or some properties. We'll call it public property. Public property. I'm writing VB all of a sudden. We'll do a public string. Again, I apologize for the dog. Public string make get set, and we're gonna make this kind of simple here. Public string model, right? Get set, And, you know, let's just do also a public string. You know what? I'm not doing this really right. Okay, okay. I was gonna do this a little bit. Okay, I'm just making this up as I go. We'll even do like public string color. Again, you might want like an enumeration or a better, you know, maybe you want like a. You probably would want this to be more of a lookup value than just a string. But again, we're just doing something simple right now. Let's just do something that simple here. I'll even do like public string license plate, right? So let's say we're building like an insurance app, right? Now you wouldn't build it all in a console app, but you know, just go with me on that, right? So I've got this automobile, and now I'm gonna create another class. And in this class, we're gonna create this. We're gonna call this. I don't know why I said class 1. We're gonna call this. We'll call this policy. All right. Yes, I want to change all that. All right. Oops. So on here, we might have some properties like. Let's type in public correctly. So I might have a property like public string policy number. Actually, you probably just say number. You know, we might even have something like a, you know, public string. Well, yeah, let's just have a number, and then let's do a public string. Not public string. Let's do a public list of automobile, and we'll say covered automobiles. Okay, now let me explain a couple things that I did here. Noticed I gave it a get. Okay, well, first off, a list, and again, we've talked about this before, but basically a list in one sense is a glorified array, but there's a lot more to it. It gives me a lot more power, and that's why actually someone asked me the other day, well, when would you use an array, and when would you use a list? I'm like, well, I can't remember the last time I used an array. For the most part. I mean, actually, I usually use an array like when I get a string, a concatenated or a delimited string. I'll use an array because I use the split function. It gives me into an array, and then, you know, and then I'll get it like that. But other than that, I don't use arrays very much. I use list, right? And mostly because I can use generics. I can get some more power out of it and that kind of stuff. But what I did notice, I didn't put a set in here, and the reason for this is, you know, Visual Studio, or not, well, I shouldn't say Visual Studio, .NET really doesn't want you to put a set in here because a set actually would overwrite the whole thing, right? So, you know, if I had this other class here, class test me, all right, and in here we had this public void test function, right, what have you, and let's say I created a new, you know, I had a policy equals new policy, right? Now, sure enough, because I did this equals new policy, new automobile list of automobile, it is already initialized, right? And sure enough, if I didn't do it there, I would have done it in the constructor, right? I kind of like doing it right there if that's all I'm going to do, because it makes sure that it's created. But if I allowed this to have a set method, right, I actually now could say policy.covered automobiles equals new list automobile. I probably don't actually want to do that, right? Because I now have wiped out any automobiles that are in there. There are probably some rules as to how an automobile becomes a covered automobile, right? So that's the reason why you usually don't want to just override your stuff, right? So, you know, by taking that set out, you notice I no longer can do that, right? So that's a long explanation as to why I did that. But I thought it was worth taking that quick little diversion. So, all right, so now I have this, and we're just gonna keep it simple. So I've got these two classes in here. So now I'm gonna go in here, and so let's go ahead. Let's create a new policy equals new policy, and then we're gonna go ahead, and we're gonna say, excuse me, what did I give them policy? Apologize. My dinner is kind of good dinner. Had a New Yorker sandwich, so like a corned beef and pastrami sandwich. I love that kind of sandwich. All right. So at any rate, what I wanted to show is we're going to now. What was I going to say? Oh, we're gonna. Oh, I was looking. I had a number. I'm sorry. That's what I was looking for. All right, so what I'm gonna do, go back in here. I'm just gonna initialize this a little bit here. So in this policy, we're gonna say the number equals, I'm just gonna, just for get something in here, I'll just make it a GUID. Okay, a GUID, I need a parentheses right here. A GUID is a globally unique identifier, right? And for all intents and purposes, and that's, I actually meant to hit F1. All intents and purposes, a GUID is guaranteed to be unique. Whoops. I was looking to see if I could find. Yeah, this isn't really good. I mean, it's good documentation, but so a GUID looks something like that usually. I mean, actually, there's a couple different formats for a GUID, and it uses I forgot. Does this tell me how a GUID is generated? Because I've forgotten how a GUID gets created. Here we go. A GUID is a 128-bit integer, 16 bytes, that we use across all computers and networks wherever a unique identifier is required. Oh, that doesn't tell me when it's. Such an identifier has a very low probability of being duplicated, but that's actually not telling me what I want. Point is you can fairly safely use a GUID as a unique value, right? So that's what's really nice about it. All right, so I'm gonna have my number, and then we're gonna go in here. Actually, I'll just do like that. And since it's so simple, we'll just put that all in line. And sure enough, I mean, I accidentally showed this off the other night with code level. Actually, I am gonna put that in multiple lines, just make it a little bit easier to read. Very good point. You know, it's so funny. Sean, I'm glad you're here because I didn't even think about that, right? I'm so used to doing the new GUID. I don't even think, and sure enough, actually, I don't know what happened. Matter of fact, can you even do GUID.new or is it GUID? I'm pretty sure you have to do new GUID, right? Okay, cool. I was gonna say so it's so funny. I mean, there are things you just do and you don't even think about it anymore. But what Sean said there, you know, this whole point right here, don't use a new GUID, because exactly that's what it's going to be. It's going to just initialize it with a bunch of zeros, and that's obviously not going to be unique, right? And it's not going to serve you any purpose whatsoever. So thank you, Sean, for that reminder. I don't know what I just did. Oh, okay. All right. So then finally we're gonna have policy, and we'll do covered automobiles dot add, and now I'm gonna do a new automobile. And in here in my automobile, okay. that was pretty cool. That so last night we had Mads Torgerson, and I think it was actually after we cut off the Twitch stream, but talking to Mads, and Sean had brought up, hey, it'd be awesome if there was a way to turn off, like when it in Azure, where it shows all, shows your subscription IDs and all that kind of stuff, IP addresses, and now grant you, Mads has nothing to do with that, right? But he was like, well, I'll find someone who I can forward it to. So that was really cool, right? And actually, I was just seeing an email where of that email traffic. So that's, I gotta admit, I love having people like Mads on, because he was just so awesome. I'm sure the folks who were here last night could say that. You're talking about bigwig, right? This guy, he's in charge of the C# language, right? And he's just like, yeah, here, let me just show you some stuff. You get a hold of Mark. Actually, do you have contact information for Mark? Because I know which Mark you're talking about. You're talking about the what is this title? Like CTO of Azure. I'm gonna remind me to talk to you about that. I could find his contact information, but if you actually have an in, remind me to talk to you about that, because I actually do want to get a hold of him for something. And I will say you can steal my idea too, which might give you an idea of what I want to talk to him about. All right, at any rate, so okay, I'm creating this new automobile, so we'll have we'll do a make. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Scott, yes, I'm sorry, I misread your. I thought you were saying he replied to the email that you sent yesterday. Yes, Scott Goo does pay attention to the MVP email list. All right, so we're going to do make. Now I'll go ahead and put in my car here. So I've got a Miata model. It is a, yeah, it is awesome to see people like Scott Goo who actually Scott Hunter replies to MVP emails too. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, so both Sean and I are Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, MVP, and one of the great things about the MVP program is that we get to get on email lists that are read by the product teams, and they have to take action. Now the action could be, sorry, we can't do anything about it, right? But they have to at least respond to it. And the cool part is, I know for a fact both Scott Goose, Scott Guthrie, and Scott Hunter, well, and Scott Hanselman for that matter, so all three Scotts, actually pay attention to those emails and will respond and will take action. And it's really cool when you see Scott Hunter take action, because well, it's really cool when you see Scott Goode take action. Obviously he's even much bigger than Scott Hunter, but Scott Hunter actually will take action. You see that like once a month, he'll take it. Something reaches his attention. Oh, I really need to take action, which is just so awesome to see that. All right, so oh, I did this wrong. The make is a Mazda. Not that it really matters for our purposes here. The model is a Miata RF, which actually is a really cool car. It's so funny. It's actually a little bit chilly out today. It was only like 67 when I went to go pick up my dinner. And I got back, and my wife, actually after dinner, my wife was taking something in the garbage can. She said, "Oh, you had the top down?" And I'm like, "You better believe it." And she's like, "Is it a little bit chilly?" That's why I turned on the heater. All right, anyways. So it's red, because, I just like paid more money for my insurance. Yeah, exactly. Oh, the Mazda, it's a wonderful car. All right, and then I'm not gonna put my real license plate number here. Oh, I don't like that one. All right, so let me take a quick step back, because sure enough, Rustic is actually the one who asked this question the other night, and so I definitely want to make sure he understands what I'm doing. Okay, so what I've done, Rustic, I created a multi-layer class because I kind of want to show some things, I think. So I have this automobile, which has a make, model, color, and license plate, right? And then I have this policy. So we're kind of like doing an insurance policy type thing, right? And in here, I mean, again, very simplified, right? But in here, I've got a number, and then I've got a list of automobiles, right? Of those, you know, so your list of like covered automobiles. And so there, we've got that. Sure enough, here, I'll go ahead. Let's just, here, I'll just copy this just so I get a couple items in here. So the other vehicle we've got is a CX-5. It's gray. And again, I'm not typing real license plates numbers. I will say the funny part, well, I keep on typing that in. The funny part is, so my wife and I, we bought our cars a week apart because sure enough, we actually bought the CX-5, which is their SUV. And then when I was actually back in the dealer because they promised to install something for us. And when I was back in the dealer, that's when I bought the Miata. Yes, that's where, and I typed it in twice. So that's why I'm purposely, I'm accidentally typing it, but I'm purposely changing. All right, I'm gonna put in one more car because I'll put all three of my cars just because. Because the other car we've got is a Dodge Dart, and it's red. And you know, whoops. There we go. So just again, some random numbers. All right. So we've done that. Now let's do this. Oh. I apologize. I didn't even notice it. Sean would have fixed that for me. But he just stepped away. All right. So there we go. We've got that. So I've got my policy set up with my automobiles. That's what I wanted. Okay. So what I'm gonna do, and just to keep some things clean, this has nothing to do with using reflection. So I'm gonna go ahead and create another method in here. We'll call this static void working with reflection. Okay. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass in this policy, right? So we'll take a policy. We'll just call it policy. And I'm really just doing this to keep it clean and keep it separated from where I'm creating data. Because really, what we're acting as if we don't even know what's actually in there, right? Because that was the question I received the other day. So now what I want to do, so I have this policy, but for different reasons, I might not know what exactly is in there. You know, actually, I probably what I should have done, let's do this. Let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's create another class real quick. And let's call this covered entity. I don't know. Right? And in here, let's just say we'll have a public string of covered entity type, right? And then what I'm gonna do on this automobile, I'm gonna inherit from covered entity. So sure enough, all right, so I created this entity type. All right, I created this covered entity, and I need to go back to here. And what I'll do in here, on here, we'll go ahead and have a new automobile. I'm sorry, new automobile, a public automobile. We'll just create it blank. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and set an entity. What did I call it? Yeah, entity type. equals automobile, right? Because that's probably what we'd want to do, right? All right, so there we've got that. And then what I'll do, again, just to make this a little bit better of an example, not in here, but in policy, I'll go ahead and instead of saying automobile, we'll call this covered entity. And then here, we'll rename this to covered entities, right? And then sure enough, because I inherited everything, it all still works, right? The population I did here, not in here, sorry, in here still works, right? Because it's still taking an automobile. But in theory, I could have like a boat, I could have a motorcycle, like, you know, whatever, right? Whatever this insurance company allows, you know, will insure, right? So now, all right, we're going to do this whole working with reflections, actually getting to it. Now I spent like the last 30 minutes just setting this stuff up. Well, hey, TBD Gamer. I did call it converted entities. Let's go and fix that. Covered entities. Oh, love it, love it, love it. Yeah, because you're doing your so sure enough. Oh, I mean, see, I don't have Sean around at the moment. Definitely. Again, welcome so much. Well, here I'm going to misspell your name all of a sudden. Welcome so much to TBD Gamer. Definitely someone to go check out. He does some really cool stuff. He's actually doing some stuff with like cover art. That hence the comment right there. You know, like the games he's working with and such. So definitely check him out. You know, another fellow live coder out there. So cool. All right. So now what I want to do is all right, so we're going to say we're going to do this. So here's a perfect example. And this is why I went through that bit of extreme. So this covered entity, I don't know what's actually in there. Now I know it's covered entities, but I don't know the extra properties that can be in there. So there could be different properties. So, and let's just say we're just going to do something pretty simple. All right. So I'm going to, so sure enough, what we're going to do, and again, I have to remember this coding because it's not like something, this is not something I do every day. But I'm going to say for each var property info, or var, yeah, property info. Actually, let me go ahead and type this out just to make this a little bit more self-explanatory. And then what I'm going to do is equals policy.getType parentheses and then get properties. Okay, and that will return me all the properties, and that should be in. That will return me all the properties that are in this policy type, right? Let me actually take this a step further. Okay, let me just, I should have done this a little bit differently. Sorry. Again, like I said, I didn't prep anything here. Let's do a for each var covered entity. See, I make sure I typed it right. In policy covered entities. All right. So, because this is a better way of doing this, right? I don't need this. So now I'm in each one of those covered entities. And again, now the way how we have this set up right now, it can only be an automobile because it's the only thing I have. But in theory, we could have motorcycle, we could have boat, we could have, you know, what, airplane, I don't know, whatever this insurance company you know, covers, right? So now in this for each, so I'm getting these policies, and all I can print at this time, covered entity. The only thing I'm going to know, look, the only property I have at this point is entity type, because it only knows the parent class, right? And that's great. I can print up the entity type. But what about the other properties? And let's just say I wanted to be able to print out the other properties. This is just a very simple method here, right? So what we're going to do, Actually, let me make one other quick change. Just to make the print. Oh, I can do this differently. Okay. I don't need to do it. That's fine. So now what I'm going to do, that for each, and again, I'm going to type this out to be explicit. Actually, sure, I'd love to hear it on chat. I was asked the other night at the program where I help people learn how to program, whether what's preferred, explicit or implicit decorations. And I told everyone, I said, well, look, what everyone does generally is implicit, right? So a var, what have you, right? I said, I personally like explicit, even though it's more typing and more reading. It's just what I'm used to. I said, but with that being said, especially when I'm doing work, I do implicit because that's kind of what's expected. For each with it. Oh yeah, no, you could definitely. I mean, I think this came up either in a stream or in Code Louisville. I mean, this is not unusual for me to do stuff like this. I kind of do this all the time. You do want to be careful how many times you go in a loop. You want to make sure you can control it. The nice part about for each is you're less likely to get into recursion, but you still want to be careful. All right, so in here we're going to have our property info, just going to name it that. And this is where I'm going to do in covered entity dot entity, not entity type, covered entity dot get type dot get properties. Okay. And yeah, no, and Rustic, I think that's a great idea, right? Because like I said, you're still learning, you're still trying to figure it out. I think that makes sense because you know what you're doing. Now, with that being said, I will say this: if I type this var, right, all I gotta do is so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do some reflection. So what I've done here, I've said, give me the covered entity, get me the type, so what type it is, because I need that type. And then once I have the type, get the properties of that type. Now let it be known, all this is doing right now is getting property info of that type, right? And again, I normally would have var, but I'm typing out that, so this is a little bit more explanatory. So now what I want to do is, now let's just look at what we get in here. So if I look at property info, actually let's do it this way. Let's do an F12 because I can get to the code. And here you can now there's a lot of stuff you see in here, right? And we're not going to really look at a lot of this. But we're not going to go through everything. Let's put it away. The important part, the things you really care about, the get value, right? So that's how to answer the question. How do I get the value of something I don't know the name of it, right? So I can get value. I can also set the value, right? There's also there's some booleans about can you read it, can you write it, right? So that's some really nice features. Just looking, something else maybe really important. To get accessors is nice, but that's a little bit more advanced than I want to go right now. Yeah, so I mean those are the kind of things you can see. Exactly. This so this is in system.reflection. This is not something I built. This is something that is, and sure enough, C# itself uses system.reflection, right? And a lot of things you do inside Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code is actually using reflection. That's how it gets all the special stuff. So I've got the property info. So now I can do something like, so because I'm going through everything, I'm just going to do a console write line and yeah, like I say, I just put it in that so it's a little bit more explanatory. But sure enough, Rustic and anyone else, I wasn't gonna necessarily put this up in my GitHub, but if you want a copy of this code, I will, I'll be more than willing to send it over to you. Is this grabbing values at runtime? Yes, it is grabbing values at runtime. That's exactly what it's doing. Yeah, Sponge, that's exactly what this is doing. Yeah, so this is all at compile time. This is doing this. So what I can do is I can now say, I'm gonna do now property info dot get here. I'll do a name. Let's actually do it this way. Oops. So in here, we're gonna do property info. Hold on, I'll look at your question there in just a second. Property info dot name, and then we'll have dashes, and then we'll do property info dot get value, and then what I have to do is I have to then pass in where I want that, where the property, or where is the property I want to get. So in here, this will be covered entity. All right, let me look at chat real quick, and I'll explain that a little bit more. I'm fresh out of university with CS game dev degree. Okay, nope, cool. So I'm not too familiar with higher level C#. No, and that's the reason why I said newbies welcome. That's what this is meant for. No, so you are fine. That is why I'm here, right? And that's why, because look, there will be some other streams I'll do, and I'll probably still say newbies welcome, but they'll be a little more advanced, right? But no, I mean, this whole week has been all about everything is for I'm actually doing the project we're gonna go into next. It's something I'm actually building for myself, but I'm actually taking time to explain what I'm doing for folks like you who are new to all this, still trying to get used to this kind of stuff. And let you know, so I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky. There's an organization called Code Louisville, which helps people. It's a free program to learn how to program, and I'm actually a mentor with Code Louisville. Thank you so much, Laser Rot. And so that's part of the reason why I'm going through such extreme. It's also to to help those folks out some more. All right, so what I've done here. All right, so number one, I'm using interpolation. That's why I've got the $. and then by putting these in the curly brackets, it'll replace that, right? So it's building the string as I go. Here, I'm just gonna make this look a little bit nicer. Put an M dash in there. So property info, one of the things I can get is the name, right? So I'll get the name, and then so then what I do is property info and then get value, and then get value. It's a method. It's not a property, right? So I actually have to pass in the instance that I want to get the value from. Okay. So now, and that's really all we need to do, right? So now I'm going back into my main here, and I'm going to say working with reflection, and we'll pass in this policy. And what this will do is it's going to go in, it's going to print out all of the vehicles. Yeah, I'm just about to run this. This is going to print all the covered entities that are in there. I want to add one more thing in here. So right here, just to make this a little bit cleaner, let me do a all I'll do is at the end of this for each, I'm just going to add a line at the end just so it separates it. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and run this, and there you go. It's already came back, and you can see. So we had an automobile. The make was Mazda. Model was Miata RF. Color was red. Here's a license plate. And again, for those who weren't watching when I wrote this, these are not real license plate numbers. And an entity type is automobile. Now, sure enough, I ended up printing the entity type twice, and that's okay, right? But I did again. I was trying to show off stuff, right? So, so that's really cool. Now, just to give us a little bit different idea, let's go ahead. So we did an automobile. I'm gonna add one more thing to this. Let's go ahead and add a new class, And let's call it house, right? And in this house, again, this will be a covered entity, right? So we're gonna get from there. And in here, we'll probably want a street address. Whoops. Get set. We probably want a let's just do, well, we'll do integer square feet. I don't know. Again, I'm just making this up as I go. All right. So now I've added that. Again, I can add this to my great, thank you. Yeah, that's why I was trying to make it simple. And something that's easy to understand, right? I mean, we all have insurance policies. You might not have a house policy because you might be an apartment or whatever, but you understand it, right? So now I'm going to do a policy dot covered entities add, and now I'm going to add a new house, right? I need to fix that. I'll fix that here in a second. So we'll do actually, let me just do like that just to make it a little bit easier to read. But let me fix this real quick before I forget again. I should have done public. Well, actually, what I really should have done is uncovered entity. I should have a constructor here, and well, okay. I'm gonna take this. No, let me. I'll do that here in a minute because I'm gonna take a step further. Let me go back to here. Let me stick with what I was doing before I introduce another concept. Yes, exactly. It's adding new items to the list. You've got that exactly right. So in here, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add this new house. We're gonna do a street address, and I'm not gonna give my real street address. That is my PO box for TaleLearCode. So I do not mind sharing this. Sure enough, if you ever wanted to send me anything, 259, that is where you would send it to. And then we'll do a square feet, and I do not live in a 4,500 square foot house, but hey, why not? We can all dream, right? So anyway, there we go. So now I've created that. And now, if I run this, no other code changes. I didn't make any other code changes whatsoever. I'm gonna hit F5, scroll this over, and there you go. Now the entity type is blank because I didn't do anything with it. So that's actually fine. But you see, it picked it up automatically. I made no code changes whatsoever. So that is what we can do with reflection. So let me show a couple of quick things with reflection, and then I'm gonna go off to my main thing to work on tonight. One, well, here, let's fix this. In this house, we should have had a public house, and then here it should have set entity type to house, right? So that would have printed that fine. That was the reason why I didn't have that in there. And then let me, so let's do this. Let's say we had, well, here, I'll do it. No, let's say we had, let's say for some reason, and this is probably more likely on a house. Let's say we wanted to know every time, let's say there's a security reason, and we want to record the last dates that something was retrieved, right? For whatever reason, right? Whatever the reason was, and or initialize. Again, I'm just kind of make this up as I go. So I'm gonna do a date time, and then we'll just say initialize the last initialized date. And Yeah, you can't even do it that way. Let's do a get on that. Because I'm gonna show off something else here. Sure enough, that should be controlled, right? You should not be allowed to set that value, right? And in here, we'll set it in here. So I'll say last initialized date equals date time dot UTC now. Sure enough, I forget I don't need the parentheses. I do that all the time. Now I should say date time, you have a now and you have UTC now. Now will get you the time, the date and time on that machine. UTC now obviously will get the current time UTC, right? I highly recommend that you always store everything UTC and then convert it to the time zone you need. Trust me, it will save you a whole lot of effort later on. Because eventually you'll be like, well, that was stored, you know, what time was that zone was that stored in? The computer was actually in Eastern time zone, but this computer is in Central time zone. Which one do I need, right? Yeah, exactly. With TBD gamers, I've been through this so many times, right? Where we didn't even know what it was set to. Prime example, the last company I worked for, not the current company, I inherited a system and I'm going through code and it was doing a datetime.now. Yeah, EST is all the way. Well, like I say, I do UTC. I mean, obviously, if I'm talking, I do. And actually, I should say right now we're in EDT, not EST. So again, time zones are difficult. But UTC, if you don't know what I'm talking about, UTC, it's Universal Coordinated Time. It's what used to be called Greenwich Mean Time. Sometimes you'll hear it called Zulu. But it's basically it's a standard time that everyone uses, right? And if you know anything about time zones are they're all a positive or negative number based upon UTC. So like for example, EST is -5, EDT I don't necessarily disagree with you there, Rustic, but EDT is -4, right? So it's 4 hours. So currently we are 4 hours behind UTC. So it's, what time is it? It's 10:08 EDT. So it is 2:08, well, 2:09 UTC, right? All right, at any rate, like I said, I can do a really large rat hole with time zones. So we've got this value. The important part, I purposely did not put a set value in here, right? So I'm gonna show you something else we could do. All right, then let's say public string set me. I don't know. Set my value. I don't know. I'm just making things up. And whatever this is, right? Because I just want to show something. So the other thing I could do in here is I can I could set values, right? So we could do something like, I'll do a safe way, or not safe way, but I'll do a way I know will work first. So I can say property info dot set value, and then here I need to, oh, hold on, that's not what I want to do. I want to say if property info name equals, and I'm actually gonna do a name of, because I'm gonna make sure I type this in correctly. Automobile dot set my value. Okay, that's actually the better way of doing this code. I could have just had a string of set my value. This is actually better, right? This name of will get the name of that parameter. And I talked about this the other night, but what's better about this is if I now, if I could go change this, to set my value now, right? That also gets changed, right? So that's why this is better, especially when you're outside of everything, right? So we're gonna say, all right, if the name happens to be set my value now, because that's what I called it now, then we'll say set my value. I'm sorry, we'll say property info dot set value. And again, we'll do that covered entity. And then, because I need to give it the object that I want to set the value to, and then the value of this object. You notice what this is. It's an object, and that question mark means it's nullable. So this could be a null object. Now I'm going to give it. What did I created it as a string, I think. Yeah, I made it a string. So we'll just again, just because I want something in there, I'll just do. Well, hey, Douglas, how you doing? How have you been doing, sir? Property info. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I just drew a blank what I was doing. It's all Douglas's fault. Douglas like, I just got here. What do you mean it's all my fault? And so here I was showing I could actually set values, right? So, and just to show you that this is doing what I wanted to do, I'll print that value before I do it. I'll set it, and then here, because it's going to print it again, that'll work, right? So again, we'll run this. And now, look what this did. So set my value doesn't equal anything. Set my value now equals that value. And you can see these are random values I'm just putting in here, right? So that's how I can use set my value, or I can use the set value, right? As opposed to the get value. Now, what I wanted to show, notice that on this house, we said you cannot, you cannot set the last initialized date, right? So if I was to go back in here, and let's just copy this. Add some white space just to make this a little bit cleaner. So now, if let's say, now we're going to do, if this is house dot, what was last initialized date? And then here, we are going to say, we'll try to set this, and because it's a date, we'll set this to, let's say, because, so, you know, probably the reason why sets are not allowed is because we want it to be, you know, we don't want malicious data getting here, right? So I could say, you know, it'll prevent me from saying date time, UTC now. So let's do add days minus 10. Okay, so add days allows me to add days. If you want to subtract days, you put a negative number in there, right? So now notice, because this is all done at compile time, notice I get no error messages at this point because this will compile. This is perfectly compilable code. But when it runs, because actually it's not compile time, it's actually at runtime. When this runs, it's going to fail. And I'm actually not sure how badly it's going to fail because I normally would have better code than this. There we go. Yeah, so there you see it. And it tells me property set method not found. So it's a very generic message, but there is no property set method. Now, the reason why I went through that, what I should have done is I should have said, now grant you, I should know that I can't set this date, but I should have said something like, and property info, actually this should be, well, now I'm gonna keep it this way, property info can write. So now, because, yeah, exactly. Well, it's because I can't do it, right? Now, you know, I won't get a compile time error because it won't try to do that, right? And sure enough, last initialized date stays whatever I set it to.
Welcome to TaleLearCode. How was your stream?
Awesome. Hey, Grumpy Game Dev. How's it going, Grumpy? All right. So So, all right, so we were talking about this. Now, let me do one other thing, because this is actually kind of a bad example, because I probably know that I can't change that value. But let's say, let's do this. Let's say I have this last initialized date that's on a house. I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna do one last thing. Let's say in here we're gonna have a public date time. Set my clock. I don't know. Again, I'm just making things up, right? So whatever value, I'm not going to initialize it, so it's not going to have any value. Well, no, I will initialize it, and we'll go ahead, we'll just do it right here. Date time UTC now, because I actually want to show it. I want to show it the value change. Oh, I keep on forgetting. I do not need those parentheses. So now if I go in here, because again, this isn't really good code right here. Really what this should say is something like, let's say if property info, and again, let me remember how to type this correctly. Dot type, property type equals, and then we'll do a get type, whoops. We'll do a date time, no, type of, that's what I'm trying to think of. Type of date time, right? So basically, if that property is a date time, and property info can write, not can read, but can write, then we would do basically this, right? So then I would delete this code here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna set this to plus 10, I don't need that plus in there. I'm just gonna add 10 days, right? So we can kind of see it. So what should happen here, again, doesn't say that I've got everything right. What should happen here is the automobile set my clock should be set to 10 days, because it'll initially be whatever time we started it at, right? And then it should then reset it to 10 days plus. But the house dot last initialized date should remain the same, right? Because that's what we said. If I can write this, then I'm gonna do this. So I'm gonna run this, and before I get overconfident, I'm gonna look at this. Yes. So here we go. We see set my clock, and you can see it's now 10 days ahead. Like perpetually. Yeah, exactly. And then, but you notice in the my house, you notice it didn't even print the one before because it didn't go into that condition. So in a nutshell, that's reflection, right? That's the very beginnings of reflection. There's a lot of really neat stuff you could do. So yeah, lots of things you can do with this. Yeah, that's really, really cool. For example, I've been working on a ORM, object relational mapper, for graph databases. And I'm using reflection there because obviously I have no idea, right? Because it could be anything in here.